you're doing something wrong. I'm gonna put your ass in jail, I'm telling you.
The lifelong liquor maker has no choice but to hand off any incriminating activities to a willing partner.
Moonshiners never really ended. It just stopped being the show millions of fans fell in love with. While new seasons kept coming, the legends who built the series slowly disappeared. Familiar faces were gone. Questions about authenticity never stopped. And little by little, the show that first captured audiences became something entirely different.
On a case against me, and I'd been warned time and time again. I mean, honestly, it scared the out of me. And I'm going to have to take a break from moonshining for a while.
So, what really happened to the Moonshiners fans remember? And when did everything begin to change? Join us as we uncover the real story. The magic behind the show. When Moonshiners premiered on the Discovery Channel on November 7, 2011, it arrived at a moment that was perfectly designed for exactly the kind of entertainment it was offering. The early 2010s had produced a wave of shows celebrating working-class American culture and regional identity. Programs like Swamp People, Duck Dynasty, Pawn Stars, and American Pickers that took cameras into communities the mainstream entertainment industry had largely ignored and found audiences that were hungry for something that felt like genuine American life, rather than polished coastal performance. Moonshiners was a docudrama series produced by Magilla Entertainment that dramatized the lives of people who produced illegal moonshine in the Appalachian Mountains of Kentucky, North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee, and Virginia. The show dramatized their liquor production efforts, their law-evading techniques, and their daily lives in some of the most remote and culturally distinctive communities in the United States. The appeal of the show was not really the moonshine. Moonshine is interesting, but it is not 14 seasons of interesting. What kept audiences returning year after year was the people and the culture those people represented. The Appalachian communities that Moonshiners documented had been producing corn liquor since before the United States existed as a nation. The tradition predated the federal government that made it illegal. The Moonshiners who appeared on camera were not performing rebellion. They were continuing something their grandfathers and great-grandfathers had done in the same hills, using the same equipment, following the same principles. That authenticity, the sense that what you were watching was genuinely connected to something real, was what gave the show its emotional texture. And it was an authenticity that rested on specific people, people who had actually lived the life and carried its knowledge in their hands and their memories. As those people aged, became sick, left the show, and died, the show changed in ways that the ratings and renewal numbers could not fully capture. But from the very beginning, the show carried a question underneath it that never fully went away. And that question was about whether what you were watching was actually real. So how fake was Moonshiners really? And what did the state of Virginia say publicly that changed how everyone looked at the show? The fakery question that law enforcement answered. The central premise of Moonshiners is that it documents people committing a federal crime on camera. Making moonshine without the appropriate federal and state distilling permits is illegal under federal law. People who produce unlicensed spirits face federal charges, potential prison time, and the seizure of their equipment. The show presents cast members doing exactly this, in apparent proximity to law enforcement, week after week, without anyone being arrested. The explanation for this apparent legal paradox arrived with unusual speed. Virginia authorities stated publicly in 2011, before the show's first season had finished airing, that no illegal liquor was actually being produced by the people depicted in the show. Virginia ABC spokeswoman Kathleen Shaw stated in a released email that if illegal activity was actually taking place, the Virginia ABC Bureau of Law Enforcement would have taken action. The Bureau went further, stating that the show depicted a false depiction of moonshine manufacturing, distribution, and transportation, and asked that a disclaimer be added to the broadcast. That request was, according to Fox News, overlooked, which is a polite way of saying Discovery Channel simply ignored it. The Virginia ABC also revealed that it had been deceived by the production team. The Bureau had participated in the first season, believing it was filming an informative documentary about the history of moonshine and moonshine investigations in Virginia. A special agent named Jesse Tate appeared in Season 1. The Bureau later stated that it had not been aware of the false depiction of moonshining and would not have participated had it known. Jesse did not reappear in Season 2. Cast member Tim Smith offered the most direct explanation for how the legal logistics worked in a Bourbon Blog interview, saying, "With the laws in Virginia, and I'm pretty sure around anywhere else, you must be witnessed, and physical samples of what you're producing have to be taken and analyzed. All of this has to be produced in a court of law, and then that arresting officer has to testify. How are you going to arrest me for moonshining I did 5 years ago?" He was essentially confirming that the filming happened under conditions where legal prosecution would be effectively impossible, which is another way of confirming that the production was structured to make the illegal activity unchargeable whether or not it was actually occurring. The production company Magilla Entertainment had previously come under fire for producing other reality shows accused of being scripted or misleading. In one of their other series, Lakefront Bargain Hunt, a woman's home that she supposedly bought on air was actually purchased 2 years before the show was taped. The authenticity concerns around moonshiners were not unique to that program within Magilla's portfolio. The show also featured footage of the legendary moonshiner Marvin Popcorn Sutton in its first season, using him as a kind of founding spirit to establish the authenticity and tradition that the rest of the show would claim to document. That footage had a problem attached to it. So what was the truth about Popcorn Sutton and the footage that opened the show? The man who was already gone before the cameras arrived. Marvin Popcorn Sutton was the real deal. He had been making moonshine in the Appalachian tradition for decades, operating in Tennessee and North Carolina, and his reputation in the community was genuine and long established. He was not a television character, he was the actual thing that the show was attempting to present itself as documenting. In January 2009, Popcorn was arrested by federal agents who found 1,700 gallons of moonshine, along with distilling equipment, firearms, and ammunition at his properties. He was convicted and sentenced to 18 months in federal prison. He was 62 years old at the time and had recently received a cancer diagnosis. In March 2009, 4 days before he was due to surrender himself and begin serving his sentence, he died by self-harm near his Tennessee home. His wife later told the Associated Press he couldn't go to prison. His mind would just not accept it. Popcorn Sutton died in 2009. Moonshiners premiered in 2011. The footage of Popcorn used in the show's first season was not filmed for Moonshiners. It came from a documentary called "This is the Last Damn Run of Liquor I'll Ever Make," filmed by Neil Hutchison in 2002 and later edited for PBS as The Last One. Discovery bought the rights to the documentary footage and used it to open their new show about moonshiners. The most authentically real person to appear in the early seasons of Moonshiners was someone who had been dead for 2 years before the show existed. His presence in the early seasons gave Moonshiners a credibility it borrowed rather than earned. And when the people who did have genuine connections to the tradition began disappearing from the show, that borrowed credibility had nowhere to go. So who were the people whose departures actually changed the show in ways that the audience could feel. Jim Hedrick, the living encyclopedia who is now gone. Jim Tom Hedrick appeared on Moonshiners from Season 2 until 2017 and represented the most direct connection the show had to the authentic living tradition of Appalachian distilling. He was not a performer or a character. He was a man who had spent his entire adult life learning and practicing the craft of moonshine production. And his knowledge was encyclopedic in a way that no amount of television production could replicate or manufacture. He knew the history of the equipment, the agricultural conditions that produced the best corn, the differences between regional styles of production, and the precise technical details that separated adequate shine from something exceptional. When he spoke about distilling on camera, he was drawing on decades of accumulated hands-on knowledge that existed in very few living people. Sugarland's Shine Distillery issued a statement after his death in September 2023, describing him as a legend in Appalachia who had dedicated much of his life to the art of moonshining, and whose colorful personality endeared him to millions. The distillery's founder, Ned Vickers, credited him with being instrumental in shaping the authenticity of Sugarlands. He had been battling kidney cancer before his death. He was one of the original connections between the show and something genuinely real. When he was gone in September 2023, the show lost a figure who could not be replaced through casting because what he represented was not a role. It was a living human being who actually was what the show claimed to document. And Jim Tom was not the only cast member whose loss changed the show's texture. So what happened to Lance Waldrup? And why does his story represent something darker and more painful than any of the other departures? The young distiller who should have had decades left. Lance Waldrup appeared on Moonshiners from 2012 alongside his father Jeff, and the two represented a compelling version of the family tradition that the show kept returning to across its seasons. Lance was young, enthusiastic, and technically innovative, bringing things like absinthe to the Moonshiners' repertoire and demonstrating that the tradition was not static, but was being actively developed by people who genuinely cared about it. He left the show in 2019. The circumstances of his departure were documented in a GoFundMe that his family organized after his death. His mother had been diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, and Lance did not want to leave her side. He stepped back from filming to care for her full-time. The decision to prioritize family over television was both understandable and, in retrospect, a reminder that the people on Moonshiners were not primarily television performers. They were people with lives that existed before the cameras and continued after them. Lance Waldrup died on February 25, 2021. He was 30 years old. His mother found him unconscious in his bed and called emergency services, who arrived and pronounced him dead. The official cause of death was congestive heart failure, with morbid obesity and cardiomyopathy listed as contributing factors. He had been in treatment for opioid addiction and had experienced significant emotional pain from the earlier losses of both his siblings, a brother and a sister, who both died of cystic fibrosis at young ages. Unfortunately, Lance is not the last tragic death that was documented. The January 2025 loss that hit the active cast. Kenny Law was a Virginia moonshiner who appeared on Moonshiners alongside his cousin Henry Law, beginning in season 11. He was soft-spoken, highly skilled, and represented the kind of technical expertise and quiet authority that the show had always been at its best when documenting. He worked regularly with Tickle across multiple seasons and became a cornerstone of that corner of the cast. Kenny Law died on January 14, 2025, at the age of 68. He had struggled with diabetes for years and suffered a heart attack in 2024, followed by a fatal blood infection in early 2025. His death was confirmed by Law's Choice Distillery, which shared a tribute to his legacy. Amanda Bryant, a fellow cast member, paid tribute, calling him a true moonshine legend. Kenny's death in January 2025 came while season 15 was in production ahead of its January 2026 premiere, which means the season that aired featured a cast that had just lost one of its members. The show has had to absorb multiple losses across its run, and each one has removed something specific and irreplaceable from what it was able to offer. And Digger Maines, who has been one of the most consistent and beloved figures on the show across many seasons, disclosed his own health challenge during the show's run that reminded everyone watching that these were real people managing real lives alongside the television production. So what did Digger reveal? And how did the cast and audience respond? The leukemia diagnosis. Eric Digger Maines has been one of Moonshiners' most popular cast members, known for his partnership with Mark Ramsey and for the chemistry between the two men that has made their segments consistently watchable across many seasons. When Digger disclosed a leukemia diagnosis publicly, his statement about it was characteristically direct. It's no fun, but he was hopeful about the future. The disclosure of a serious illness by an active cast member while the show was still in production was a reminder that Moonshiners, whatever its authenticity questions and production compromises, was documenting the lives of real people who were aging in real time with real consequences. The cast members who had been young and physically robust in 2011 were now in their 50s and 60s and dealing with the health challenges that come with those decades. Eric Digger continued to appear on the show while managing his diagnosis, which itself became part of what the later seasons were documenting. The resilience of people who had built their identities around a craft and a specific community, and who continued showing up for both, regardless of what else was happening in their bodies. His partnership with Mark Ramsey has remained one of the show's most consistent sources of its original appeal, and their presence in season 15, navigating the economic pressures of trade wars and tariffs on the legal liquor market, continued to demonstrate that the show still had something genuine at its core, even as so much of what surrounded that core had changed. The fact that Moonshiners has survived for so many seasons isn't because every cast member's journey went according to plan. In many ways, the show's history has been shaped just as much by the people who stumbled as by those who kept it moving forward. Tickle's legal troubles and the show that kept going. Stephen Ray Tickle has been one of the most colorful and occasionally most problematic figures in the show's history. He was arrested for public intoxication in 2013. In 2015, he was arrested during a traffic stop for possessing a sawed-off shotgun and sentenced to a 3-year suspended penitentiary sentence. While on probation for the firearm charge, he received 5 months behind bars for cocaine use while on probation. The arrests and legal troubles became part of his documented story, rather than reasons for his removal from the show, which was consistent with the show's general approach to treating its cast members' full lives as material rather than hiding the difficult parts. Tickle has continued to appear across the most recent seasons, including season 15, where he remains a central figure alongside Tim Smith, Mark Ramsey, and Digger. The core cast that viewers associate with the show's mature period has remained relatively stable, even as the older generation of truly traditional Moonshiners has thinned dramatically. Tim Smith, who appeared on the show while simultaneously building a legitimate commercial distillery business under the Climax brand, represents the most visible example of the direction that several cast members have followed, using the show's platform and visibility to transition into legal commercial distilling while maintaining the outlaw identity that the audience found appealing. Season 15 had Tim crossing back to the outlaw side to chase profit from a cross-border bootlegging operation into Canada. a storyline that reflected both the show's creative flexibility and its awareness that the original premise needed to keep evolving to sustain viewer interest. Season 15, which premiered January 6, 2026, positioned itself explicitly around the economic disruption of trade wars and tariff-related price increases in the legal liquor market, framing the Moonshiners as outlaw rebels responding to big business pressures in the same spirit as the original Whiskey Rebellion of 1791. The show's ability to find contemporary economic and political context for an ancient craft is one of the reasons it has survived 14 seasons when most reality shows collapse after 3 or 4. Discovery Channel has already greenlit Season 16, with core figures including Tim Smith, Tickle, and the duo of Mark and Digger slated to return for the new season in late 2026. The show has not ended, but the version of it that Jim Tom Hedrick and Popcorn Sutton and Lance Waldrup and Kenny Law inhabited is the version that has ended. And that version, the one rooted in people who carried the actual living tradition in their actual bodies, cannot be renewed for another season. The fakery that Virginia law enforcement identified in 2011 was always less damaging to the show than that more fundamental authenticity problem. You could argue about whether the shine was really being made illegally on camera. You could not manufacture the specific knowledge and presence of someone who had actually lived life for 50 years. Which moment in Moonshiners' history stayed with you the most? And do you think the show can ever feel the same without the legends who built it? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.